All right, welcome into Dog Central. I'm Graham Coffee. I am joined today by my friend and co-host John Smith. John, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good man. So we are here today to talk about some ACC over/under win totals. August is breathing down our necks. We're only, I think, 5 Saturdays away from actual football, so it's
Actual
coming
football.
quick. Things are picking up over on the Dog Central website. Obligatory for us to say that if you have not checked out dogcentral.com, and more importantly, if you have not subscribed to dogcentral.com, you really should get over there, see what we got going on, especially if you're into this type of content. Josh
Yep.
is not with us today. He is at the beach. He's looking tanned. He's looking sleek. He's looking svelte. He's looking beautiful. He's kayaking in the bay right now. But
He's getting season ready. He's getting ready for
that's
the
right.
season.
Before
Absolutely.
he left, though, he posted some incredible data on the Dog Central forum. Also, a really cool tool where you can go game by game for 2022, pick your teams with a drop down menu, and compare them from an advanced statistics standpoint. You can get all of that and a bunch of recruiting intel from Jason and the Field Street Forum guys, a bunch of my analysis and intel, and a bunch of fall camp updates starting here next week for 6 months for $33.18. We're ending that soon, so get over there and check it out.
Yep.
Yeah, anything else you want to say about Dog Central before we jump into this?
No, can't beat it. There's a budding community of Georgia and college sports fans in general that are very engaging over there too. So come check it out. It really is a good deal, and I'm excited for the content that's going to come as fall camp starts next week too. So it's going to be just getting started. Going to be a lot of stuff coming down the pike.
Absolutely. So am I. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the ACC win totals. Interesting conference this year. The highest win total is Clemson at 10.5, but there's only two teams, or really three teams, with win totals under 6.5. That's Syracuse, Duke, and our friends down on North Avenue, Georgia Tech. So a lot of not really much at the top, but a very deep middle. And we're going to sit here and talk about if any of those teams we think can emerge into that top tier of the league. Starting off, we've got Boston College over under win total of 6.5. It's juiced to the under, minus 130 to the under, plus 110 if you want to bet that over of 6.5. So Vegas thinks the under is more likely. Looking at them, you've got a good secondary. Josh DeBerry is a very good corner, ranks first among ACC slot defensive backs in coverage grade, and places in the top 5 among ACC boundary corners in the same metric over the last 2 years. The thing that concerns me the most is the offensive line lost all of their starters. The flip side of that is that they gave up a 36.4% pressure rate in 2022, which was 113th in the FBS. And Phil Jerkovich was hurt for most of the year, and they still managed to put together a pretty decent season. So Jerkovich is a big kid. I think he plays okay under pressure. You got Zay Flowers at wide receiver, who is good. George Takas transfers in from Notre Dame, good tight end. But I don't know where the running game is going to come from. And I just, Jerkovich, I feel like, is one of those guys who has not played a ton. So we always talk about him as like, oh, when they have him, they're going to be great. But do we really know that? You know what I mean?
That's a great, yeah. They're also probably going to start at least one redshirt freshman on that offensive line as well too. So it's not just a matter of all the things you mentioned, which are great stats to think about. That offensive line has a lot of questions with a quarterback that we haven't seen healthy and performing at his best level, right? So there's for me there's some confirmed losses on the schedule and probably 3 toss-ups. And so I'm going to take the under of that 6.5. I think if it was 5.5, maybe I would take the over. But the under, I think they're going to lose at Clemson, Wake Forest, NC State, and Notre Dame. So that's 4. And then, you've got Virginia Tech and Florida State and Louisville that I feel like are going to be toss-ups for them. And so I would count at least 2 of those in the loss column out of Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Louisville. So that gets you to 6 losses. I think they're a 6-6 team again, personally.
Yeah, I'm sitting here struggling between 6 and 7 myself.
Yeah.
I think that Rutgers game to open the season is kind of sneaky. Greg Schiano is doing a decent job up there. I feel like there's a lot of coin flip games on the schedule, or ones that, I think they're a single-digit underdog. And if they had a little more experience up front, I might get on the train, but they don't. And so I feel like that's a lot to put on Jurkovic's shoulders. And I don't know that we can, obviously we hope everyone stays healthy all the time, but I don't know that we can trust that he's going to make it a full season behind a porous offensive line. So I am going to jump with you onto that under of 6.5. Just barely, though. This isn't one that I think I would go and bet my own money on. But
if it was 6, it might be a push, right?
Right, exactly.
It's and I think for me, having 2 of those 3 toss-up games I mentioned, you threw in Rutgers as a possibly 4th toss-up game, but Virginia Tech and Florida State are both on the road as well too. So I think there's just a lot to overcome for them to get to that 7-win total this year.
Absolutely. All right, moving down the list, the Clemson Tigers. So highest win total in the conference, over under of 10.5. We have them at plus 110 on the over and minus 130 on the under. So Vegas has this juiced a little bit to the under. Curious to get your thoughts on Clemson. We know the defense returns a lot up front. But they also lose Venables. And you have DJU back, who struggled mightily last year. The offensive line returns, I think, 4 of its 5 starters, but it wasn't good. So I don't know if returning production is necessarily a great thing there. What's your thoughts on Clemson, just kind of on the whole? I think this is a really interesting year for them.
It is really interesting, right? Their offense did not have a lot of success last year. I don't know their historical net YPP, but I would imagine that last year was one of the first times when that was below 1 potentially in the last couple years, at least, right? Yeah, the last 5-6 years.
7,
8. So the offense is a big question mark. Is DJU? I also think the ACC, which we're going to talk about these teams throughout this podcast, but I think the ACC is going to be better in some cases across the board than they have been historically when Clemson was, just dominating that conference. When you look at teams like NC State or Wake Forest, Clemson has to play at Notre Dame again, and so for me, I think there's just a lot of questions on the offense that when you look statistically, they had a down season last year, and they're not returning a lot of guys outside of, I guess Will Shipley, Kobe Pace, DJU, but these are all capable players. But can they rise to the occasion of what they were expected to be when they came to Clemson? The defense, what I will say is the defense, Brian Breesy, Miles Murphy, like those guys are going to be phenomenal. They were really great last year, had a decent success rate. But again, they had some games where they were kind of exposed last year too. So 10.5, normally you would kind of say for Clemson, you would kind of say, hey, that's decently safe territory to take an over on a 10.5 for Clemson. I'm struggling. I think Clemson is going to win 10 games again, but I don't know that they're going to get to the 11th.
Yeah, so for me, I think the way that I look at this is the offense almost has to get better just because it was so bad last year. I think, not to toot my horn too loudly, but when we were doing our Georgia Clemson previews last year, I think I was actually the first person in America to point out the fact that all of Clemson's wide receivers had the same body type of like 6'5" and run straight line. And I thought that might be problematic for him because you need someone to just run a slant on 3rd and 5 sometimes. And it was. So I do think that they will have more diversity in the receiving core. On defense, I feel like there has to be a drop-off. And it's not because the players aren't still really good. It's just Venables is a very, very good play caller.
Correct.
The other side of this is that, let's just be honest here, Clemson is famous, infamous, notorious, whatever you want to call it, for stealing offensive signals. That reputation has gotten out over the years. It's legal. What they do is totally legal. So I don't want to sue. But, you know, it's like that reputation has gotten out over the years. And so, you know, like Louisville, Malik Cunningham at ACC Media Days was like, yeah, we were driving for the game-winning touchdown and we were out of timeouts, so we had to go signal. And then they started stopping our offense for the first time all day. So we're looking forward to seeing them again and hiding our signals. Like it's not it's not unknown. But DJU, I can't talk myself into it. I can't.
Well,
I know he slimmed down a little bit, but it's like, dude, last year his like he was just not good. His uncatchable pass rate was 34.3%. Over a third of the balls he threw were not catchable. So I think they'll be better on offense, but I think they regress on defense, and so it kind of evens itself out. Looking at that schedule, you know, they're going to beat Georgia Tech. They're going to beat Furman. They're going to beat Louisiana Tech. They will beat Wake Forest because they will maul them up front. I've watched too much NC State football in my lifetime to think that they're going to go down to Clemson and beat them in Death Valley, especially for, you know, beat them 2 years in a row. At Boston College, could be a sneaky one just because Boston College has the type of defense that I think could maybe give them some trouble. Like, I think that they kind of cruise until November, and then you go at Notre Dame, Louisville, and Miami, and South Carolina maybe could be good. I don't see them as an 11-win football team, but I look at their schedule and I'm just like, you know, they have the 52nd hardest schedule in the country, as they always do. And it's just like, who's going to beat them? They don't play, you know, a lot of, I don't know. I'm going to go under on sheer principle of not believing in the quarterback.
Well,
but I think they start the season 8-0. And then
right. And I think that here's the situation, right? I think it is going to depend on Cabe Klubnik, who is supposedly really good, but going to be a freshman, or DJU, the play from one of those guys. And I do think Clemson, you know, I think one of the challenges is if Dabo, you know, sticks with DJU, I think those first 4 games probably set him up to be the guy. And then I think you're in a situation where
the problems start.
You hopefully have gotten some reps with Cade, because I think the problems are going to start as you get to that back half of the schedule. And again, there's nothing, statistically, it really is, can they sustain defensively? They return 80% of their sacks and pressures from last year, which is great. But they lost Brent Venables. So can they sustain defensively and improve offensively? And I personally don't believe that they can do both, to the tune of, it's hard to win 11 games. It's hard to win 11 games, even with their schedule being 52nd strongest in the nation. It's winning 11 games is difficult. And I think the ACC is ripe this season to have a couple of those teams knock Clemson off. And so I'm going to take the under 10.5 too. I think it's a 10-3 season. And I would probably, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how Dabo responds if they face some adversity with the quarterback position specifically early on.
Yeah, because he does not really have a good history of making the right call there. Especially,
No.
you look back at Deshaun, he cost them a couple games not pulling
Yeah.
him into the lineup
Yeah.
earlier.
He started Trevor Lawrence because he had to, because Kelly Bryant was playing so poorly in that game, the fourth game of the year. He had
Texas
played
A&M.
Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. And he had to make a move or Clemson was going to lose that game. And so
Yeah,
I think he was forced into that one personally. So, yep.
agreed. Okay,
All right.
moving forward, we have the Duke Blue Devils over under of 3 plus 100. If you want to bet over 3 on Duke, minus 120 on the under. We're not going to spend too much time on Duke. They got the new coach in here. I like Mike Elko. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll infuse a little bit of energy. Really, what this comes down to for me is looking at the non-conference. They've got Temple, which I think is a winnable game. They go to at Northwestern, also winnable. North Carolina A&T is sneaky, and at Kansas, I think Duke could start 3-1 or 4-0, and then just kind of fall into a win somewhere else on their schedule. I do think that the offensive line will actually be a bit of a strength, and I just think that Elko's defensive mind will infuse a little bit of edge to them. I'm going over on Duke.
Okay, I'm gonna take the flip side. Here's the thing. Here's what I would say. At 3, I would stay away because I think at 3 it's a push. At 3.5, I'm taking the under. So that's my personal opinion, right? So if it's 3, I think that's probably going to be a push because I do think they'll beat Temple. I do think they'll beat North Carolina A&T, and then I think they'll win. One more. Kansas probably would be the most likely one on the rest of that schedule, or Georgia Tech. But to your point, if you win both of those, then you're over the 3. I just think it's going to be very, very difficult with what they have returning with a new coach. Even though I believe in Mike Elko from a defensive standpoint. I think last season was just pretty tough, right? It's 3-9 is what you're trying to build off of, so you're trying to find that fourth win. I don't have a lot of statistical reasons to say that other than I just look at their schedule and I'm just not a believer. So I'm pushing at 3, taking an under at 3.5.
Fair enough. I don't.
All right.
Never gonna argue too hard with you on a Duke over under. Florida State over under 6.5. This is juice to the over. You get minus 125 if you bet the over, and you're gonna get plus 105 on the under. What are your thoughts on FSU this year?
Man, FSU, for me, this is a Mike Norvell kind of show me season, right? And when I look at that schedule, I think it's set up for a show me schedule.
Okay.
When I look at those 12 games, you have interesting for me because I think you have a toss-up game with Florida, and then you have losses at LSU, Louisville, NC State, Clemson, and Miami. So that puts you at five what I would consider definite losses, and then a toss-up with Florida. And I think the biggest challenge for Florida State is that can they build on some of the things that they did last year defensively? They return, almost 80% of their defensive production from last year and 70% of their offense. And returning bad production doesn't mean, it's still bad production if it's bad. But I do think Jordan Travis is going to be better at quarterback. I think you're going to be in a situation where you have a schedule that lines up pretty well for you to build some momentum after that LSU and Louisville game. I think that's my take. At 6.5, I'm going to say Florida State's going to win 7 and lose 5.
Okay, so yeah, I look at. I think Florida State kind of quietly improved the second half of last year.
Yep.
The first half of the season, they were 59th of 66 teams in Power 5 on offense. In the second half, they were 36th of 66, and I think a lot getting Jordan Travis back healthy in the lineup. He is, I think, a very, very good running quarterback. His arm is okay enough to make some plays.
Yeah.
What's interesting for me is, Kenny Dillingham leaves and Alex Atkins gets promoted, the offensive line coach. They've got a lot of running back talent. Their quarterback is a running threat. I think that they are going to go with a pretty run-heavy approach, and I think that is a sound move for them just because it's less likely they're going to turn the ball over. It's less likely they're going to go 3 and out and only take 12 seconds off of the clock. I think from just a game state standpoint that they will just stay closer and stay within striking distance more often doing that. I think the ceiling is a little bit lower, but Florida State's not in a position to go and try and win a national championship right now. Defense is the question for me. I think, they were, really, really rough at the beginning of the year last year. And in the second half of the season, they were 9th in the Power 5 on, in terms of total defense. So I think it's like, do they keep that momentum? And when I'm asking myself that question, it's looking at their early schedule. We know they're going to beat Duquesne first week of the season, 27th. That game at LSU feels so massive to me from a mental standpoint. Like, if they can pull that off, I think they believe and they can get some things rolling. I'm not ready to pick that game yet because I haven't done the proper amount of study on LSU. I think LSU is a small favorite right now, even though that game is in New Orleans. So I don't know. Assuming they lose that game, I still think that they can beat Boston College, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Louisiana, and Duquesne. I'm going over. I think they get just maybe 8 wins, but probably certainly 7. Betting on Florida State is tedious these days, but
I mean, they were top 30 in opponent yards per play last year. They just had their problem was they were 107th in the number of plays per game that their opponent ran on defense. So they just couldn't get off the field. And I think, from a defensive standpoint, I think that if they can string some things together to get off the field, I think they will have an improved offense. Now the offensive coordinator is the wild card, obviously with Dillingham leaving, but I look at the schedule and I can see 7 games on that schedule that will go Florida State's way. And if they mess around and beat LSU, which I'm with you, I'm not ready to pick that game either, but if they mess around and win that one, I think it could really, it could be a good, maybe even an 8 or 9 win season for Florida State. Knock on all the wood. I'm not saying Florida State is going to win 8 or 9 games, but they are that type of team right now where you get a little bit of momentum going the right direction, and I think they have some players who can play.
For sure. Okay, moving forward, we have Georgia Tech over under 3.5. The over, it's actually juiced to the over at minus 125, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And plus 105 on the under.
It's not that surprising when you look at that schedule. They have Ole Miss.
No, it's juiced to the.
It's juiced to the over. Oh, I thought you said it was juiced. Okay, I thought you said.
So that's interesting. Like you have a smaller return on your dollar for betting the over than you do the under, which shocks me.
No, that's very shocking.
Yeah, but you were talking about the non-con. Ole Miss at UCF, Georgia.
And Georgia.
And they get Western Carolina, but it's like that's a brutal ass non-con for a coach that desperately needs to show some signs of life, just because they're going to be a double-digit underdog in probably all of those games, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, for me, I think the other challenge that you have with Georgia Tech is not just being the underdogs, but they are returning very little production from a season where they were pretty bad. They lost Jahmyr Gibbs to Alabama. I think Josh in the stats that he shared with the Dog Central community of subscribers says Georgia Tech is returning 47.9% of their production from last year, and they weren't good last year. They were 3-9 last year. And so, and they had Jahmyr Gibbs, right? So, for me, I don't see that. I don't see how they're going to win 3 games. I definitely don't see how they're going to win 4. I think they'll probably beat Western Carolina. They may, mess around and beat Duke or win, maybe Virginia or one of those types of games. But they're going to lose to Clemson. They're going to lose to Ole Miss. I think they'll lose to UCF. I think they're going to lose to Pitt. They're going to lose to Miami. They're going to lose to Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Florida State. You just go down that list, and I have them at 2 to 3 wins at most this year.
Yeah, I think if this was going to work for Jeff Collins, last year was kind of the year. They returned almost their entire roster, and they were a pretty veteran-laden team. You had Gibbs. Jeff Sims, I think, can be very electric when he has some help. I just don't think he has any help. I'm going under. We're not going to spend any more time on Georgia Tech. Louisville, one of the more fascinating teams in the ACC. Over-under of 6.5. Plus 105 to the over, minus 125 to the under. So Vegas is shading towards the under on this one. Really interesting year for Louisville. If it was not for the recruiting they were doing right now, I would say this is a kind of a make or break year for Scott Satterfield, just because people in Louisville are still pissed that he flirted with the South Carolina job a couple years ago. But he's got a bunch of kids from California, and Reuben Owens committed to him. And so I don't think he's going anywhere. But an interesting I think they did a sneaky good job in the portal. They brought in Tyler Hudson, who was a Central Arkansas wide receiver, but really tore it up at the FCS level. They bring in Tyon Evans from Tennessee. Malik Cunningham is back. He was the only FBS quarterback with at least a 90 rushing grade for PFF in 2021. So I think there's a high floor on the offense, but the question a little bit is just the defense, which has been kind of a struggle since Satterfield got there. They added 6 defensive backs from the portal who have a combined 5,000 career snaps. They do return a safety and a defensive back in Keitrell Clark. So I think I'm high on the Cardinals, man. I like, some of the things that Cunningham does. Just, I don't know. He's not putting the ball in bad spots too much. Looking at his throw chart, he's very comfortable throwing the ball down the field. I'm going to go ahead and say that Louisville is what everyone wants. Not everyone, but like we were just talking about Florida State and kind of the scenario of like how things go well for them. I think that's really the team that Louisville turns out to be, is like everything went right for Florida State is kind of how Louisville will look. At Syracuse, at UCF, that UCF game in week 2 is going to be a big swing game for them, I feel like. But I mean, looking at the schedule, you get at Syracuse, at UCF, Florida State at home, South Florida at home. Like your home games in the ACC are Virginia, Wake Forest, James Madison, Florida State, and NC State. That's not bad. You do have to go to Clemson and Pittsburgh, and you end the season with Kentucky. But I don't know. I think they set up pretty well, man.
Oh, I think so too. You laid it out pretty well. Malik Cunningham. I mean, he had what? Almost. Did he have over 4,000 yards of total offense last year? If not, he was pushing it pretty close.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think the receivers that they got from the transfer portal, the guy from Central Arkansas and D. Wiggins from Miami, I think are going to be very strong, and their schedule sets up pretty nice. I mean, I think there's not much to hate about Louisville, picking their schedule, other than they went 6-7 last year. But I think last year, when you look, the Clemson game was a good example where they were competitive in that game. They probably, had a chance to win that game. So when I look at their schedule, I see 6 or 7 wins in the regular season for sure. And so I'm going to go for me. I'm going to go over the 6.5 because I think seven is definitely doable. I think getting to the 8th or the 9th might be difficult, but but when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, you got Syracuse, you got South Florida, you've got James Madison, you got a lot of games that are if you end up losing, for example, to Wake Forest, you got James Madison the next week, and so I think you got some get right games before you go to Clemson, for example. So I think Louisville has a nice schedule to win 7 games this year.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna. I could see them coming in. Wake Forest is gonna regress a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're kind of the clear, maybe end up being the clear 3rd team in the ACC Atlantic behind NC State and Clemson. I'm going over on Louisville. I feel good about it.
Same.
All right, probably one of the most interesting ones on this list. Miami over under 8.5 plus 100 to the over, minus 120 to the under. Man, this one is very, very fascinating. Tyler Van Dyke was really, really good last year. Kind of came out of nowhere for De'Aaron King. Very favorable non-conference. Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss, NC State. They do go to Texas A&M week 3. I think that's a fascinating game. 11 guys come in from the portal. They have a very high ceiling, I feel like. Van Dyke, second highest big-time throw rate percentage from PFF in the country last year at 7.1%. You've got Brashad Smith, who was kind of underused in that offense last year, but comes back. Tyreek Stevenson is still there to sort of anchor the defense. James Williams is on the back end. I think they have a very good secondary. They have some stuff on the interior line. Last year, they were 18th in the country in EPA per pass rank, but 102nd in EPA per run. They bring in Josh Gaddis as the OC.
Yeah.
They bring in Kevin Steele as the defensive coordinator. Lots of big name hires. Yeah. What say you on Miami?
Yeah, I'm personally I'm high on Miami. I think I'm a believer in Josh Gaddis, for example, when he has the weapons. I mean, what some of the stuff he did at Michigan, was just like he did a fantastic job over the course of the last 2 to 3 years of getting that Michigan offense into a place where they could really score points, and they could do it in a couple of different ways. And I think he's going to have a lot more weapons at Miami than he had at Michigan. A lot more talent, athletically on the offense. I'm a believer in Tyler Van Dyke. I also think, I think Mario Cristobal, he has juice right now. Like he has juice. He has in the program. And that's really important. I think he has the coaching staff that will make these kids believe that they can compete right away under his system and under his program. And so for me, I think Miami is going to surprise a lot of people and win, 9, maybe 10 games. So I'm going to take the over from my standpoint. I think all the stats you mentioned, but also you have 7 starters on that defense that are back. And so even with, Tyreek Stevenson anchoring that defense, you have a lot of guys that played a lot of snaps last year that are coming back. And I think it's I think it's going to be a good year for Miami.
So at Oregon, I was critical of Cristobal for being a little bit too run heavy at times, trying to be too much, kind of 12 personnel type stuff, very heavy up front, a lot of man ball. He is a former offensive line coach. He's an offensive line guy. I think at Miami, they have lacked that physical line of scrimmage, point of attack type of run game for decades now. And so I think that what he brings is really what they need. At some point, we will have the conversation about is kind of the Cristobal philosophy holding Miami back, but that's not going to be this year.
Agree.
This year, I think they're going to have a good season. I think they win their division in the ACC. I think they start 2-0 with Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. They go to Texas A&M in week 3 and upset Jimbo and the Aggies. They beat Middle Tennessee. I think they roll through their schedule. I think at Virginia Tech, October 15th could be a sneaky one. That's a tough place to play. But, they don't draw NC State, which I think is a huge plus for them. They play Pittsburgh last week of the season, and they get them at home, which is a big advantage. They don't have to go up to the cold. We know how Miami does in the cold, not well. Yeah, I mean, I think the last month of the season, you've got Florida State at home. I think they'll win that game, but that's a rivalry game. Weird things happen. Then they go to at Georgia Tech. Should be fine there. But, yeah, you close with at Clemson and then Pittsburgh at home. That's going to be interesting. But I think Miami, I'm going to call them a sleeper college football playoff team.
Yeah. Here's what I'll point out for folks. I agree with you. One thing I'll point out, Josh Gaddis, in 2018, Josh Gaddis was the co-offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach at Alabama. So he's the offensive coordinator under Mario Cristobal. So I do think the Mario philosophy is going to be there, but you don't have Joe Moorhead standing beside you. You've got a guy who, was – you can define what co-offensive coordinator means at Alabama, but you have a guy who was coaching wide receivers when Alabama was averaging 330 yards passing a game and 45 and a half points a game.
Ruggs, Judy, Smith, all those guys.
So I think Josh Gaddis, right? Like he knows how to use those athletes. I think it's there's just going to be a little bit of a different juice than Mario probably had at Oregon with a guy like Joe Moorhead, who is a good coach in his own right, but a very different philosophically. And so I agree with you. I think Miami's a sleeper team. If they can string together some momentum in that schedule and get going downhill, as my old coaches used to say, if you can get the program going downhill, I look at week 3 at Texas A&M being that for them. If they can win that game and I think they can make a run to, by the time they get to at Clemson in week 12 and Pittsburgh in week 13, I think you could be having some interesting conversation about Miami.
I agree. Yeah, I think the big question is just, will they kind of step on the banana peel somewhere along the way, as Miami is want to do.
Right.
And as Oregon was known to do under Cristobal too, right? Like, I don't think they're ready it's not prime time yet. Like, we're not talking about, I do think they're a sleeper playoff team, but I think if they got in the playoff, they get blown off the field by anyone else who's there.
It's a Michigan situation, right? Like it's the Michigan situation. I feel
it's a Michigan State situation for me, maybe.
There you go.
Like
Okay.
the year that they made it. Like I think, Michigan was maybe a little bit of a step up from what Miami will be. I mean, it just comes down to the schedule, man. I mean, I don't think there's that much on it. And I think if they can win that game at Texas A&M, then things just kind of fall their way. And I think that they will. We'll talk about Texas A&M in a couple weeks. But, I still think Clemson will beat them probably, or I'm not sitting here thinking they can go 12-0, but I think 10-2 is very, very likely, and I think 11-1 is a possibility.
Yep. Same.
Cool. All right. UNC over under of 7.5. It's juiced to the under at -135. Kind of a program in flux a little bit. Last year, your preseason top 10, things really fall apart week 1. They don't really, you lose Sam Howell. The offensive line has been pretty abysmal. They lost a lot of pass catchers. Josh Downs does come back. They have good defensive backs in Storm Duck and Tony Grimes. But, I don't know. They do have some good recruits up front.
Yeah, you got Gene Chizik back as the defensive coordinator. So,
God. Is that good or bad?
Yeah. I don't think that's good. I don't think Mac Brown in a year where he is it's hard to say if Mac Brown is, fighting for his job, but in a year where he's definitely on the hot seat coming off of a season that should have been much better for them. I don't think Gene Chizik, a guy who hasn't coached in 6 years, and the last time he coached, he was the defensive coordinator in North Carolina. Is he? I'm pretty sure he got.
I think he's on the staff, but I'm not sure if he's the defense.
Oh, okay. All right, got it.
No, maybe you're right. Wait.
Yeah, I thought
he's the assistant head coach for defense.
Head coach for defense,
So the defensive coordinators are Tommy Thigpen and Charlton Warren, who we remember from his time at Georgia.
Okay, so again, I'm going to call Gene Chizik the defensive coordinator.
Fair enough.
Assistant head coach for defense, and then you got two guys that are all that.
They don't know what they're doing on defense.
I think it makes the point even worse by saying, is he the defensive coordinator? And then you got these two guys that are co-defensive coordinators. I just think North Carolina. I think they're going to be in a tough situation defensively. They do return, a decent amount of their defensive production from last year, but again, it just wasn't that good. I mean, they had situations last year where they were, giving up 45 points to Georgia Tech, right? And just being in situations that just didn't make a lot of sense for some of the talent that they have on that side of the ball. So for me, I think it's going to be under for me. It'll be interesting to see how they do. In that early game when they go to Appalachian State, I think that second week, that's going to tell the tale for me. And I know that's weird to say an Appalachian State game. It's kind of setting the tone, but that's a game. That's a game 2 years ago. Yeah, that's a game I think they very well could lose, and that's going to tell the tale for me.
So for me, I actually think things set up sneakily well for North Carolina this year. Phil Longo is a really good offensive coordinator. He kind of made chicken salad out of what last year.
Mm-hmm.
That offensive line was extremely porous, and he found a way to get Sam Howell to run for over 1,000 yards. They were fourth in explosive play rate in the country, 15.3%, ninth in EPA per run, 37th in EPA per pass, pretty well balanced. The defense, as you pointed out, has been abysmal, but I think this is kind of the time you get Tony Grimes and Storm Duck at corner. That's two
We're
very
very
good
good.
boundary corners.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get Miles Murphy inside up front. You get Raymond Voashek inside up front. I think this is the year where they're good enough on defense. The linebacking core is still very suspect for me. I mean, like, they have been emasculated when it comes to run defense for the last couple of seasons. But you do have Travis Shaw up there too, a former 5-star recruit. Like, he could contribute early. I think that they're going to be better on defense, and I think that they'll be pretty good on offense. I just don't think there's that many strong defenses in the ACC that's going to really disrupt anything they want to do. They've got Notre Dame in the conference schedule, so that hurts them a little bit. They do go to Miami, but I think that they go. I think 8-4
Okay.
is there. I think they lose to Notre Dame, Miami, and NC State for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But also NC State is, man, that late game against UNC is one that they will lay an egg sometimes historically. So who knows? Yeah, I like the over. I'm gonna quietly back the Mac.
Go for it.
I am. All right, NC State over 8.5, over under 8.5, minus 150 to the over, plus 130 to the under. One of the more fascinating teams in college football. Some people have them as a preseason top 10. Devin Lee is a very good quarterback. They return a lot of wide receivers. It's, they did lose their two top running backs. The defense has been very good. NC State has this weird habit of putting out NFL defensive linemen with regularity.
Regularity.
Yeah, I like Thayer Thomas is back. Very good wide receiver, probably the best slot receiver in the ACC. Tim Beck is still the offensive coordinator, which concerns me. I do think that NC State has a habit of like run, pass sequences where they get behind the chains, but Devin Leary bails them out a lot. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead. Hold on, actually. I'm not sure if I'm ready to do this. Please.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's you just summed up the challenge with NC State, right? I mean, that's it. That's the way everyone feels. Is that the hype is there? They have 18 starters returning. The linebacking group, right? I think is going to be phenomenal. Devin Leary, I think, is going to be good again. But they play a lot of close games, right? I mean, I think when you look at the schedule, I think it's another year of a lot of close games with NC State. And so when you're thinking 8.5, are you saying, that they're going to be on the winning side of a close game, with Virginia Tech, or a winning side of a close game with Florida State, versus being on the losing side? And so I think for me personally, I think you definitely have losses at Clemson. I think you definitely have a loss at Louisville. But I look at the rest of that schedule and I'm like, can I find another loss? I think they're going to be close, but is there going to be another loss? And so that's already at 10 wins there with those two losses. So I'm going to take the over. I think there's going to be a lot of close games, but I can't find 4 losses with the linebacking group, assuming they stay healthy, the linebacking group that NC State is going to have, and what they're returning on offense, I think they're going to have enough firepower and enough kind of bow your neck on defense to win those close games.
It always scares me to back in a season-long situation at teams that find themselves in more close games than they really should.
Right.
NC State was 24th in turnover margin in the country last year, which turnovers are mostly luck. So I don't know. I think if you're in the top 15% of the FBS like they were, it goes down. They went 9-3 last year, and it felt like everything kind of went right for them. They won in double overtime against Clemson. They had a miraculous comeback at home against North Carolina. NC State as a football program has never, ever in their history, not once, won 10 games. Not 10 regular season games, 10 games at all, including a bowl win. They've never won the ACC division that they're in. They've never gone to a conference title game. I think this could be the team to do it, but it's not going to be my money that is riding on breaking the trend. And I actually think that things went so well for them last year that I'm going to go under 8.5. I think they win 8 games.
Okay.
I think it's classic NC State shit.
You know it. You grew up a North Carolinian, so you know it. For me, I look at the flip side of it and I say two of the 3 games they lost last year, they lost 45-42 Wake Forest, they lost 31-30 at Miami.
Fair.
They could have had those 10 wins last year, and they were turning 18 starters, and so
fair.
I'm gonna believe the hype train at 9 to 10 wins, although you really made me think about it when you use all those nevers. So I
never's a long time.
Yeah, I would stay away from it with your own personal money if it were me. I'm not going to be betting this personally, but if you're asking what I think it's going to be the over.
I smell this one from a mile away, buddy. That's an under.
Go with Graham. Go with Graham.
Pittsburgh over under 8.5. It is juiced evenly both directions, -110 and -110. You've got Keaton Slovis coming in. I think that's a very interesting kind of development there. We saw him have one good year at USC and one really bad year at USC. So what is he? Mark Whipple being gone from Pittsburgh concerns me a whole hell of a lot, especially after Pat Narduzzi showed up at ACC Media Days last week and talked all that smack about how his offensive coordinator didn't run the ball against Wake Forest, even though they were going for 10 yards a pop. Their pass to run rate in that game was like 52% to 48%. And they didn't run anywhere close to 10 yards a pop. So what this tells me is that he wants to go back and man ball this thing. And that scares me. They play West Virginia in game 1. Our old friend JT Daniels versus Keaton Slovis, the guy that took his job at USC. UC opening Thursday night storyline for us. Then they go to Tennessee. Tennessee goes to them. They get Tennessee at home the very next week. The other non-conference is at Western Michigan. Why they're going to Western Michigan, I don't know, but they did lose to Western Michigan at home last year, and then they play Rhode Island at home. I'm in on a regression here. I think that Narduzzi is going to go back to just kind of playing that old school Will Muschamp style of football. He was head coach where he makes games 7 to 10 point games when they could be 24-point games. I think West Virginia upsets them in week 1.
Yeah, I agree. My personal opinion is that Narduzzi was saying some of that because he has to go back to that. I don't think he has I think he knows that he's not going to have the skill players outside of maybe, Keaton Slovis. I don't think Narduzzi, when he said that, for me, my spidey sense says he's not a believer in his ability to have a Kenny Pickett and a Jordan Addison again this year. And so he's kind of sending signals that that's where they're going to go. He's also a stubborn guy who's been there for however many years, and they finally have an off the chart season statistically offensively, and he's got to take shots at it. So all of that adds up for me for regression. I think they're going to lose to West Virginia. I think they're also going to lose at Miami. I think they're going to lose to Tennessee. I think they're going to lose to Louisville. And that's 4. That gets you to the under right there. And then there's a couple other games that I also think are, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, right?
Syracuse.
I mean, you can make enough of a case where Pittsburgh is a 6-win team by the time it's over this year.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't see it. There ain't 9 wins here.
Yep.
Not with that coach. Right. Syracuse over under 5. Dino Babers' job is on the line. They have probably the best running back, and they have the best running back in ACC. He may be one of the backs in college football, and Sean Tucker. Garrett Schrader is back. He accounts for a good quarterback run game. They had the 11th most efficient rushing attack in Power 5 a season ago. But Schrader really struggles through the air. And so I think that's the curious thing. I watched their spring game, and I was really impressed. They brought in Robert Anae, a new offensive coordinator. I have to remind myself where he came from. But they're opening things up quite a bit. And I think they have – he was the offensive coordinator at Virginia last year, which had a very good passing game with Brendan Armstrong.
Yep.
I'm kind of sneaky high on Syracuse. I don't think they're going to, come out of nowhere and win 9 games by any means, but they play at Connecticut. They open with Louisville, which I think they'll lose. They go to Connecticut. I think they win. Purdue at home, I think, is a winnable game. I think that's kind of a toss-up for them. Virginia at home, I think, is a winnable game. Wagner at home, they win.
And then it just gets tough sledding.
It does.
Yeah.
But I think teams, if you look kind of throughout the last decade in the ACC, teams struggle to come up and play at the Carrier Dome. Clemson's been bit up there a couple times. NC State has been bit up there. I don't know. I think this is a tough one. Yeah, do you have a pick for Syracuse?
Yeah, I think they win 5 games. And there's, maybe 1 or 2 more that could be a toss-up, but I just think that stretch with NC State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Florida State, they're going to go to Pitt after NC State, Clemson, and Notre Dame with no bye week, and I just think it's going to be tough for them that through that sled of Florida State, Wake Forest, Boston College. So I have them winning 5 games. I'm calling it a push at 5.
I think that Syracuse could improve greatly as a team and maybe not improve drastically from a record standpoint.
There you go. That's the challenge, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I do think for Louisville, that's a sneaky week 1 game. I like Louisville to win it, but I could see a scenario where that goes a little bit wrong for them. Since we're picking win totals here, I always assume I have to pick over or under, so I'm going to pick over because I just kind of believe in what they're doing, but I agree with you that 5 is the most likely scenario.
Okay.
All right, Virginia over under 7.5, juiced heavily to the under, -150 for the under, +130 for the over. Elliott takes over as the head coach there after an anemic Clemson offense last year. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and come out and say it. Robert Anae, the guy we were just talking about that's at Syracuse right now, and Brocco Mendenhall, I thought did a very phenomenal job with Virginia and Brennan Armstrong last year and created a very explosive passing attack, one of the most explosive in college football. I watched Tony Elliott get mentioned for head coaching jobs for half of a decade, despite taking talents like Deshaun and Trevor and DJU and running offenses that were serviceable, but like really didn't do anything schematically to take advantage of a lot of the matchups they could have. I felt like
Agree.
if someone else was running those offenses with that talent, you could have been talking about like 2019 Burrow kind of seasons at certain points. Like maybe not quite that good, but
no, Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, Trevor Lawrence should have been in the Bryce Young conversation with multiple Heismans. If Tony Elliott runs the offense that he should have run with Trevor Lawrence.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, they do get Armstrong back. They get Keaton Thompson back, who's a fun player. He runs, he throws, he passes. He was a quarterback at Mississippi State at one point in his career. I think they regress. I don't trust. I need to see it before I believe it. They've got Richmond at home. They'll win that. I think they lose at Illinois week 2 on the road. Yeah. I think they could lose at Syracuse week 4 after beating Old Dominion in week 3.
Yep.
I mean, the back half of that schedule, Miami, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, they got Coastal Carolina at home November 19th. Yeah. I could see them losing that game, especially if things have gone poorly to that point in the year. They go to Virginia Tech at the end of the year. I'm way under on this.
Me too. I think you've got losses at Illinois. I think you got losses at Louisville, Miami, North Carolina, and then you've got Syracuse, and I'm going to count, Pitt as a loss as well. So I think that gets you already to that number. And then you got toss-ups for me with Coastal Carolina, Virginia Tech. I think you end up in, maybe 5-7, 4-8 territory.
For sure. Virginia Tech over under 6.5 plus 125 to the over, minus 145 to the under. So Vegas is quietly high on the Hokies. New head coach Brent Pry, really like Pry coming in. Grant Wells transfers in from Marshall. Sneaky good quarterback. I think he was very good at Marshall, actually. I think he can bring some explosion to that passing game that hasn't been there in a little while. I'm just sort of interested to see what they have on defense. Last year, 110th in the FBS and EPA per run rank. Not good. What are your thoughts on Vatek?
Yeah, I mean, Virginia Tech has they haven't won more than 6 games in 3 out of the last 4 seasons, right?
Yeah.
And so so you're not in a situation where you have to really, for me, you have to really be looking for something that stands out that you're like, this is the reason that now out of and I know you had a COVID, kind of shortened season in there, but still sure. you're in a situation where 2019 was the last time they won more than 6 games. And I'm going to take the under. I think they probably win 6. It's a tough situation because I do think Brent Pry has a fantastic situation that he's walking into, right? In terms of there's been a lot of blank space for him to work with. You're not walking into a situation where you have a lot of folks that are kind of cemented in his position. So I think he'll be able to put together a pretty good roster. But I think his best situation is 7 wins, which makes me think that's not going to happen personally. So I'm gonna go under the 6.5.
So I do like some of the things that Pry's done. He
Yeah.
hired Joe Rudolph, who was the Wisconsin offensive coordinator, to come coach his offensive line. I feel like that was a big coup. They don't really have any sort of established running back. I think if they can find a running game, they will be good. I trust the offensive line will be all right, which is an improvement for. But there's just too many swing games on this schedule. It's like Boston College is a swing game. West Virginia is a swing game.
Yeah.
At UNC, swing game. At like Virginia, swing game.
Yeah, if you think the ceiling for them is 7-5 and the number is 6.5,
right?
I'm with you. I just see too many games that are toss-ups that for me to believe believe it enough to bet the over personally.
Yeah, I'm going under 6.5. Wake Forest over under 8.5 wins, plus 110 for the over, minus 130 on the under. This is our last ACC win total. The offense, we know it, we love it. Long points for days, baby. Dave Clawson, one of the best coaches in college football. I think here's simply put, my logic on Wake Forest is I just don't know that anything has happened that's going to really change that defense. And they are equipped to win those track meet kind of games where they're trading possessions back and forth. But I just don't know how often you can do it. Sam Hartman is really, really good. There's not really any part of the field that he struggles to throw to. A.T. Perry is a very good wide receiver. Like, that offense is going to be dynamic again. I just don't know if they can avoid getting caught in the shootouts. They'll beat VMI. They go on the road to Vandy. I expect them to win that game. I expect them to beat Liberty. I expect them to lose to Clemson. Florida State, kind of a toss-up game. They beat Army. Boston College. Like, I don't see the over. I think they'll go probably 8-4, 7-5, but I'm not taking Wake to win 9 games.
Yeah, I agree. To win 9 games, that means that you have to.
Everything has to go right for them.
Yeah, you lose. The ones that you mentioned, but then you also you have to. Everything has to go right at Louisville, North Carolina, Syracuse. Florida State, NC State. Yeah. And I just don't see it happening. Although I will say Sam Hartman, with the Peaky Blinders fit that he wore to media days, did want to make me believe a little bit. Like he showed up with
I didn't see Blinders. This picture.
Oh man. So he showed up dressed like Peaky Blinders with the little hat with the beard
right now.
Oh yeah, he was ready. And so yeah, but even then I don't.
Oh, this is cold, dude.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It was such a good. It was really good. But even with the Peaky Blinders fit, I don't think there's enough there for me to bet the over.
I want to bet it. I'm like this is like X-Files for me. I want to believe.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think 8-4 is like I don't know though. It's like I look on the schedule. It's 2 games. Like, the only game I can really say for sure that I know they're going to lose is Clemson because of the discrepancy at the line of scrimmage. I don't know. Like, I could see them going and beating NC State and Raleigh. Yeah. I could see them Louisville. I could see them. Yeah, I think it's just going to be hard for them to not regress a little bit. So I'll go under, but don't be shocked if they go over.
All right. That's it. We made it through all 14.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for pairing with us. We did 14 teams in an hour and 10 minutes. I think that's pretty solid pace. Good bang for your buck if you're listening to the podcast. If you are listening to this podcast or you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Please rate and review us. It helps us a lot. if you really love us, send it to your friends or, tell somebody about it. We're going to do some fun stuff here in coming months with some sticker giveaways and stuff. So be on the lookout for that. We already told you to go subscribe to Dog Central, but we'll tell you one more time. Go check out Dog Central, subscribe. Please come visit us there. We'd love to interact with you, answer all your questions, hang out. John, you got anything else to say before we go?
No, that's it. Thanks for tuning in.
Awesome.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you guys on Thursday night for our Ask Dog Central show. Take care.
All right.